evening, everyone. We're going to call the Planning Commission to order to start. Please remember to turn off your cell phones, and there is a parking validation machine for the garage, which is located at the rear of the chambers. And so at this point, we'll do a salute to the flag. So we have present Commissioner Allen, Commissioner Yesney, Commissioner Griswold, that's me, and Commissioner Bonilla. So we've got quorum. We have the recording.
Welcome to a meeting of the San Jose Planning Commission. The following is a summary of the Planning Commission's hearing procedures. If you want to address the Commission, please fill out a speaker card located on the table near the audiovisual technician and deposit the completed card in the basket. There are also speaker cards in the back of the chambers and at the side entrance. The procedure for this hearing is as follows. After the staff report, applicants and appellants may make a 5-minute presentation. The chair will call out names on the submitted speaker cards in the order received. As your name is called, please line up in front of the microphone at the front of the chamber. Each speaker will have 2 minutes. Speakers using a translator will have 4 minutes. After the public testimony, the applicant and appellant may make closing remarks for an additional 5 minutes. Planning commissioners may ask questions of the speakers. Response to commissioner questions will not reduce the speaker's time allowance. The public hearing will then be closed, and the Planning Commission will take action on the item. The Planning Commission may request staff to respond to the public testimony, ask staff questions, and discuss the item. If you challenge these land use decisions in court, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised at this public hearing or in written correspondence delivered to the city at or prior to the public hearing. The Planning Commission's action on rezonings, pre-zonings, general plan amendments, and code amendments is only advisory to the City Council. The City Council will hold public hearings on these items. Section 20.120.400 of the Municipal Code provides the procedures for legal protests to the City Council on rezonings and pre-zonings. The Planning Commission's action on conditional use permits is appealable to the City Council in accordance with Section 20.100.220 of the Municipal Code. Agendas and a binder of all staff reports have been placed on the table near the door for your convenience. Thank you.
So before we begin this evening's meeting, we want to remind you about the city's response to the latest guidance from the County of Santa Clara Public Health Department to slow the spread of the novel coronavirus COVID-19 and to reduce the number of people infected. The city is at a stage 4 high response level of its pandemic response plan. This means that there is a high risk to the local population. While the city's development services are continuing regular operations, this evening we ask you to avoid handshakes, sit at least at an arm's length, remember to sneeze or cough into a tissue or your sleeve, and discard the tissue. There are tissues here. Hand sanitizer is also available at the front. And remember not to touch your face. And please use a tissue when touching door handles and discard the tissue. Thank you. We're going to move to the public comment section of this meeting. I do not see any comment cards. Are there any members of the public who wish to address a matter that is not on the agenda? Okay. Seeing no responses, we will move to the deferrals and removals from calendar. See one item, is that correct, that there's the one item that's going to be removed from calendar? Is there any other items?
Thank you, Chair. Sylvia Doe with Planning, Building, and Code Enforcement. There are no other updates to the deferrals.
On the consent calendar, are there any commissioners that wish to pull any items? Seeing no responses, do we have a motion? Commissioner Yasny.
I'll move staff recommendation for both the deferral and the consent calendar items.
I'm going to second that motion. Then we'll take a vote. And the motion passes with a 4-0 vote in favor. All right, moving to the public hearing portion of the evening. We're going to take the items in the order that they appear on the agenda. Does staff have any additions or clarifications to the items before we begin?
No, Madam Chair.
So I'll call, sorry, go ahead.
So item 5A is a quarterly update. And if the commission would choose to review, staff has a brief presentation. Otherwise, staff is available for any questions.
Okay. If we could have the presentation. Yeah. I just forgot which order.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. Aparna Ankola from the Policy and Ordinance Team, Planning Department. So the item before you is a proposed quarterly update to make minor changes within specific sections of the zoning code. The proposed updates to Chapter 20.30 would clarify the maximum gross square footage for accessory dwelling units and clarify parking requirements for junior accessory dwelling units and for units within two-family and multifamily. And it makes other formatting changes within those sections. An additional reference is to eliminate the minimum rear setback of 5 feet for an accessory dwelling unit. The proposed updates to Chapter 20.40, Commercial Zoning Districts, would delete height exception requirements from the section, and it would relocate the provisions to Chapter 20.85 that sets forth area-specific and use-specific height restrictions. An additional change to Chapter 20.50 includes deletion of leftover text from a prior amendment to Industrial Park Zoning District. The proposed updates to Chapter 20.90 would modify Table 20-190 to clarify parking requirements for commercial indoor recreation to allow flexibility for use type. And these are for uses that require reservation appointments or classes with limited attendance would have a lowered parking ratio. And this update also includes minor text alterations to Table 20-210 to rectify labeling errors for parking facility. This project is scheduled for a City Council hearing on April 4th, 2020. This concludes the presentation, and staff is available for any questions. Thank you.
Are there any members of the public that wish to comment on this item? Seeing no hands or no people. Are there any members of the commission that want to ask any questions? Nope. Yes?
Madam Chair, I'll move approval of staff's recommendations.
Take a vote. The motion passes with a 5-0 vote. And for the record, I'll note that Commissioner Oliverio is present. Okay, turning to item 5B.
Okay. All right. You want me to go ahead and start? Okay. All right. Okay, good evening, Planning Commission. My name is Kerry Green. I'm one half of the airport's planning staff. With me this evening is Ryan Sheelan, the other half of the airport planning staff. And we're also joined by the city's Director of Aviation, Judy Ross, and the Deputy Director of the airport, Drew Niemeyer. Almost said Niedermeyer. Okay. Okay. The last time we appeared before you, or I should say, last time we appeared before the Planning Commission on what we call a major amendment to the airport master plan was in 2010. So we don't do these very often, and so for some of the planning commissioners, this may be your one and only opportunity to talk about an airport development program. So I'll get started. We have about 15-minute presentation, and starting with, what is the airport master plan? Well, the airport master plan is simply a long-range guide to airport facility development. It's kind of analogous to the city general plan, which is a long-range guide for the city, and you have projections of population and employment and distribution of land uses to serve that population and employment. And the airport master plan is kind of the same thing. We have projections of passengers and aircraft operations, and a program of facilities development to adequately serve that demand. The last comprehensive update to the master plan that we did was in the 1990s. It took a number of years. It was controversial at the time. And although there's no federal state requirement that airports do master plans, most airports do have master plans. It's a good thing to do. And the City Council in 1998, right after we completed that long comprehensive update to the master plan, passed an ordinance. One of the provisions was that all capital improvements at the airport must be consistent with the adopted master plan. So that pretty much means we will always have a master plan, and it's important that we keep it updated. Next slide, please. Okay. So why are we here tonight? There is also in the municipal code an ordinance that the council passed in the early 1990s while we were doing that comprehensive update to the master plan, which sets forth requirements for preparing the master plan and for keeping the master plan up to date through what are called amendments, both major and minor. Major amendments, as defined in the code, are those proposed changes to the master plan which either modify the goals, objectives of the plan, increase design capacity of the airport beyond what's in the existing master plan, or would expand the aircraft noise contours beyond what's in the existing master plan. So we've done 3 major amendments since 1997. Again, the last one was in 2010. The code also defines minor amendments as just about any change to the master plan that doesn't trigger a major amendment. And so minor amendments are usually more project specific. We're adding a project to the master plan that's not in the current master plan, or we're changing the size or the location of a facility proposed in the master plan. And we've done 13 minor amendments to the master plan. The last one was in 2018. So under the city municipal code, whenever we propose a major amendment, it's stipulated that it comes to the Planning Commission for advisory review. Since you'll be reviewing an EIR tonight anyway, you would be reviewing this. And it also goes to Airport Commission for review, which is a step we've already completed. Next slide, okay. So just a quick orientation. This is an aerial photo of the airport. North is to the right, south is to the left. And the airport is about 1,000 acres, and you can see most of it is actually taken up by the airfield. We have 2 runways. Those are the 2 long and wide strips of pavement on the aerial photo. The runway that's closest to the terminal area, down at the bottom of the photo, that's mainly used for departures. And the runway that's kind of in the middle of the field, that's primarily used for arrivals. Also on the west side of the field, near the top of the photograph, is a former short runway that was previously used by general aviation aircraft, essentially the small propeller-driven aircraft. And that short runway was shut down in 2009 on an interim basis. And one of the elements of the amendment that we're proposing tonight would provide an ultimate disposition of that former runway. Okay. So what we're proposing in the major amendments is basically three elements. One is to update the plan horizon year from 2027 to 2037, along with updating the demand projections for the year 2037. And that's really the trigger for the major amendment. It's a big change from the existing master plan. The second element is we want to incorporate a number of changes to the airfield layout that has been recommended in a study we're just completing that has the long name of Runway Incursion Mitigation / Design Standards Analysis Study. That is a safety study that was funded by the FAA. The FAA actually came to San Jose to offer us the grant funds to do the study because there is a history at San Jose of runway incursions. And so we did the study that looked at how to address those issues, and we've come up with a number of changes to the airfield, mainly to the taxiway system, that are changes that aren't in the master plan today, so that requires us to amend the master plan to add in those improvements. And also with going out to the year 2037 with new demand projections, we also want to modify a number of landside improvements so that they are designed to adequately accommodate the projected demand. So the terminal buildings would be a little bit larger than currently in the master plan. We're also changing the sizing of the parking garages, the cargo areas, the general aviation developments, and the support facilities. And some of those facilities are smaller than what's currently in the master plan, and some, like the terminal, a little bit larger. And the footnote at the bottom is just to advise that the city municipal code currently constrains the airport to a total of 40 gates. And based on our updated demand, we feel we need 42 gates. So as part of the actions that go to council would be an amendment to the Muni Code to allow us to have 42 gates. Also, in terms of landside facilities, we're proposing to add a hotel, which is essentially a non-aviation use, and that's really the only new project we're proposing to add to the landside facilities. Next slide. Okay. It's also important to point out what this proposed amendment to the master plan does not do. First of all, it's not a substantial change to what's currently in the master plan. The master plan today calls for expanding the terminals out to 40 gates, building parking garages, expanding the cargo operating areas, and relocating and expanding support facilities. And really, that's still what we're planning to do, just in a slightly different manner. We're not adding new runways, we're not extending runways, we're not relocating runways. So the major parts of the airport remain in place and don't change with this master plan amendment. Another important point is that these changes to the master plan are not capacity enhancing. It's a concept that some people in the public have a problem grasping. But the history of airports in this country over the last few decades, and certainly at San Jose, is that facility constraints do not constrain demand. The demand will occur whether or not the facilities are improved. If airlines identify a market for their flights and they put in the flights and people buy tickets for those flights and fill the seats, that's what's going to happen. And so what we're trying to do with the master plan with the landside facilities is to provide an adequate level of customer service so that we don't have overcrowded hold rooms and long security lines and inadequate parking lots. So it's important to point out that even if we didn't do anything, we still expect the demand that we project for the year 2037 to occur here at San Jose. Lastly, we want to point out, because you'll note from the EIR that a lot of the public comments we got were from residents in the northern part of the county who are very concerned about aircraft overflights. And a couple years ago, the FAA redesigned the flight paths in the Bay Area, as they've done in other parts of the country, and they've tightened up the flight tracks. So what happens is those people that happen to live under those tightened flight tracks hear a lot more noise. And when San Jose has arrivals from the north, which is 13% of the time, these residents will hear it and so are concerned about it. But it's important to point out that the airport and the city have no control over flight tracks. That's purely within the FAA's purview, and nothing we do in this proposed amendment to the master plan is going to change that. So next slide. So I'm going to take a break from talking and have Ryan go through some of the highlights of the projects, both on the airfield and on the land side.
Good evening. And so moving along to the airfield projects, just to briefly give a little bit more detail, especially on the RIM study. So as Carrie mentioned, it stands for Runway Incursion Mitigation. And so a runway incursion, just for everyone's knowledge, so we know why we're doing these improvements, is when essentially when an unauthorized aircraft, or it could be a vehicle or a person, is on the runway when they didn't have permission. So that permission would come from the FAA Air Traffic Control Tower on the airfield. And so essentially this FAA safety study, we took a hard look at the airfield and the airfield layout and saw where we could make these safety improvements to reduce runway incursions. And so we did look, just a little bit of background, we did look at the history of all runway incursions for the past 20 years at the airport. And we did an extensive analysis with our consultant team to come up with a recommendation of safety improvements, and that's what you see up here, which I'll briefly go through. So you'll see the legend down in the bottom left-hand corner to designate what we're talking about here. So the primary, first and foremost, is the closure of that third runway, that general aviation runway we saw in the earlier slide from the aerial. And so that's at the top of the picture, or the west side of the airfield. And the red is showing you pavement that will be removed, and that's actually that former runway, which is now used as a taxiway. And the gray is showing you all new pavement that will be put down to install a new taxiway system on the west side of the field for, again, for those general aviation and corporate aviation that we have at SJC. On the other side of the airfield is all of our commercial airline traffic. And so next, one of the big recommendations that came out of the study was to shift taxiways so that aircraft can't go directly from the ramp out onto the runway, so that can lead to a runway incursion. Instead, the FAA criteria asks that aircraft have to make a turn before they get out to the runway. So that's why up here in this picture on the bottom half, you'll see the red is denoting pavement removal. That's where the existing taxiways are, and the gray is where all these new taxiways will be shifted to. So all of the air traffic on the east side of the field, predominantly the airlines, will have to make that turn before getting out to the runway. As you can see, similar is being done on the west side with the new taxiway system, so aircraft can't go directly out into the runway. Additionally, you'll see the green pavement in between the runways, so those two taxiways will be closed. And so why are they painted green, right? The FAA, that's the criteria. It's essentially the same as putting in grass, but we don't want to put in new grass for lots of reasons, including wildlife. And so in this case, these two taxiways directly enter into both of the runways, and they enter into that center third of the runway where the aircraft are traveling the fastest when they're arriving or departing on your flight. And so essentially we're going to close those. There's no need to have that added risk for runway incursions, and aircraft can cross at other points on the airfield. The last off, the big recommendation that came out of this study, you'll see on the far left and far right in green as well, the north and south. And so that pavement will also be, we'll put green paint down and close that pavement. Those taxiways are not, do not meet FAA criteria for the width. They're larger, so they do meet FAA criteria, but they're larger than they have to be, and that can lead to pilots getting confused and disoriented, especially at night, and again that leads to runway incursions. So that is another step that we'll do is address as part of these the airfield projects and the master plan amendment. Okay, moving along to the landside projects, part of this master plan amendment. And so obviously with the main one being the Terminal C or Phase 2 extension. And so that will be a 42 gate facility up from 40 approved in our current master plan. So a small increase. And actually currently today, as you'll see, and you may know, we have our interim terminal facilities, and that currently allows for 36 gates. So we'll be turning those into permanent facilities, and so the terminal extension will be overlaid and built on the existing interim facilities. And so along with the terminal expansion, again, we need to accommodate the parking that we're going to lose, that will be displaced in that existing area. So we have long-term and short-term parking garages. And so on the far left, you'll see what's known as the economy lot garage or the long-term garage. And then you'll see the short-term garage, which will be built directly across from the terminal. And those will both be, as Carrie mentioned, those will both be reduced in size from what we have in the existing master plan. So essentially, there's going to be less spaces in those, only what's predicted to be needed. And so the new project as part of this master plan, again, is the airport hotel directly across from that terminal expansion to serve our traveling passengers and business passengers. And last of all, for the major projects out of this is future belly cargo. You'll see down at the southern end, the right-hand side of the screen. And so that's for the airline cargo that they carry in the belly of their plane, and that will be displaced with the terminal expansion as well. So we'll be relocating that facility and building a new facility.
Okay, just to finish up our presentation on the public review and approval process, separate from the EIR that David will go through, we've done a number of progress reports and to the City Council, the Transportation and Environment Committee, the Airport Commission, and the County ALUC. The County ALUC did take action on the proposed master plan amendment in January. Their action is not to approve or not approve the amendment. Their action is actually whether to accept the proposed amendment to the master plan as a basis for updating their comprehensive land use plan for the airport, because their charge under state law is to develop a comprehensive land use plan based on the airport master plan. So they did approve the acceptance of the master plan amendment for their use. The Airport Commission had a meeting just about a month ago. They received a presentation similar to the one that we just gave, and they voted to recommend City Council approval. And so we're here tonight in front of the Planning Commission, and we hope to be on the agenda for the City Council on March 24th for adoption. And with that, I'll turn it over to David to talk about the EIR, and then we'd be available for questions.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. David Keon, Principal Planner, Environmental Review of the Department of Planning, Building, and Code Enforcement. So the reason why this project is before the Planning Commission is because under Title 21 of the Municipal Code, any projects with an Environmental Impact Report, EIR, that have a statement of overriding consideration because they have an identified significant and unavoidable impact must go through the Planning Commission, which will make a recommendation to City Council. So this project has a significant unavoidable impact, and therefore it is before you tonight as part of, to seek your input and recommendation to the City Council. So just some background, the Environmental Impact Report Notice of Preparation was issued back in December 2018. The draft EIR was circulated for public review between November 27th and January 17th, 2020. There was a slight extension at the request of one of the reviewing agencies. This particular Environmental Impact Report identified two significant and unavoidable impacts. One is to air quality during construction and operation, and cumulative air quality impacts. Most of this was due to the aircraft operations, which is beyond the airport's control. In addition, the same thing, greenhouse gas emissions were found to be significant and unavoidable because of, mostly due to aircraft operations. In addition, there were significant impacts of mitigation identified to biological resources. This include Congdon's tar plant, burrowing owls, bats, migratory birds, and riparian habitat, archaeological resources, and hazardous materials. And the City Council will have to adopt a statement of overriding considerations if they wish to adopt this EIR. So, as required by CEQA, the EIR also evaluated alternatives to the project. These include two no-project alternatives. One is a no-project alternative 1, which is essentially keeping the airport as it is with no new development. The second is no-project alternative number 2, which is to continue development with the existing master plan. Basically, this would be build out of the master plan to 40 gates rather than 42 gates, no airport hotel, and no changes to the runway configurations as recommended by the runway incursion mitigation study by the FAA. There are also several alternatives that were considered but rejected from further study because they were deemed infeasible. One was to relocate the airport to Moffett Field, relocating the project to a new airport or site in the region, such as Coyote Valley, or accommodating the demand at other Bay Area airports. All of these were found to be infeasible. During the public review process, the city received 74 public comments. from state agencies, local jurisdictions, and different neighbors and community interest groups and individual members of the public. The main issues raised during the public comment period were the increase in airplane noise from increased air traffic, especially in northern Santa Clara County cities during south flow operations. This is the operations that occur about 13% of the year, especially when there's especially during rainy times. Another one, air quality and greenhouse gas impacts from airport operations and aircraft. Traffic increases on local highways, expressways, and other nearby roads. Impacts to burrowing owls, including a desire for additional mitigation. Impacts to the Guadalupe River riparian corridor. A desire for improved public transportation to the airport, and as well as others. So the responses to these comments were provided in the First Amendment, which is posted, and people were notified on February 28th, 2020. These responded to all these comments that were received, and this is part of the packet that was provided as part of the Planning Commission packet. I do want to mention, this is a recommendation. So staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend that the City Council adopt a resolution certifying the environmental impact report and making findings concerning significant impacts, mitigation measures, alternatives, and to adopt a statement of overriding considerations and a related mitigation, monitoring, and reporting program, all in accordance with the California Environmental Quality Act. To adopt a resolution approving a major amendment to the airport master plan for the Norman Y. Mineta San Jose International Airport. And actually, it's 3, approve an ordinance amending Title 25.04.300B1 of the San Jose Municipal Code to increase the maximum number of air carrier gates from 40 to 42. I do also want to mention that since the publication of the First Amendment, we received 2 public comments from community members concerned about airplane noise and air quality impacts from airplanes due to increased air traffic. In addition, this afternoon at just before 4 p.m., we received a letter from the City of Santa Clara responding to the First Amendment, raising issues on our response to their comment letter on the EIR related to greenhouse gas emissions, hazardous materials, noise, transportation, and transportation. I do want to mention that for regard to transportation impacts, the city threshold of significance is vehicle miles traveled and not level of service, and therefore for the purposes of CEQA, we use the vehicle miles traveled metric as required by state law. However, the City of Santa Clara requested some additional information regarding level of service and intersection operations. This information was provided, even though it's not required under CEQA. It was provided as a courtesy, and these responses that they are responding to do not address anything related to transportation impacts as related to CEQA. I do have available to help respond to these questions John Hessler of David J. Powers and Associates. He can answer questions regarding response to the letter or other aspects of the environmental impact report. We also have a biologist that has also worked on the airport project. But we have prepared an environmental impact report that is thorough, analyzes and discloses all of the significant impacts, identifies mitigation measures, and identifies situations where those mitigation measures do not reduce to less than significant impact, and therefore must be deemed significant and unavoidable. All of this is laid out in the EIR, the First Amendment, and the resolution that's set forth. So, and staff is here to answer any questions. In the meantime, I'm going to pass it to John Hessler.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'd like to respond to the portion of the letter that came today from the City of Santa Clara, and it has to do with noise impacts. The City of Santa Clara made a number of contentions that the analysis in the EIR with regard to noise impacts was flawed, and I'd like to address those for the record. So the first thing is Santa Clara contended that the use of the CNEL, that's the Community Noise Exposure Level, fails to address the impact of noise from nighttime flights on sleep disturbance. The CNEL does in fact address this issue because each flight that occurs at the airport between 7 p.m. and 10 p.m. is counted as 3 flights, and each flight to and from the airport that occurs between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. is counted as if 10 flights had occurred. And that weighting is purposely done, recognizing that flights that occur during those hours have a much greater potential to cause sleep disturbance. So that's built right into the CNEL. And I point out that this is actually analogous to what San Jose, Santa Clara, and most cities do when we use the LDN in our general plans. It's the same type of descriptor that includes penalties for nighttime noise. So bottom line is the CNEL does very much account for the potential for sleep disturbance from nighttime flights. There's another statement in the letter from Santa Clara that the noise analysis relied solely on the CNEL in terms of what is significant and what is not. And they pointed out to a court case that occurred in 1991 called Berkeley Keep Jets Over the Bay. It was an appellate secret case where the court found that the use of CNEL alone was insufficient to tell the whole story about noise impacts. But in this case, in this EIR, we did not rely solely on the CNEL. We, in fact, use supplemental metrics, including what they call the time above, how many minutes per day the noise is above a certain level. That's a nice indicator of things going up and down. We also looked at the single event noise level. So we've done this in this EIR and in the previous master plan EIR precisely because the community has asked for a more thorough discussion of noise impacts and the potential effects on the community. So finally, Santa Clara also faults the noise analysis by contending it relies solely on a relative threshold instead of an absolute threshold. Santa Clara argues that, well, what if noise could theoretically increase in the future and it could keep increasing incrementally, and so long as there was no absolute threshold, it could keep going up inch by inch and it would never be called out as significant. That's their contention. But they fail to realize that we do have an absolute threshold in the EIR, and that is the 65 decibel noise contour. That is consistent with state law. It defines everything within the 65 as being incompatible with the airport. And just to illustrate that point, the airport recently completed what they call an acoustical treatment program, and they treated 2,675 residences and 4 schools within the 65 decibel contour because by definition they were considered incompatible, and didn't matter how they got there or whether there was a big or small increase. The fact that they were within the 65 meant they were eligible for treatment. And I point out that in this EIR, it's interesting because the noise contour is steadily decreasing in size because the technology on aircraft has changed significantly. We actually, if you look back through the 70s and 80s and 90s, the noise footprint of the airport was far bigger than it is now, even though we have more flights, and that's because of the change in technology, which has been dramatic. So interestingly enough, when you look at what we're now showing for the projected contour for the year 2037, that's actually smaller than the area previously treated. So in a way, we over-treated in the past because the noise footprint was bigger. So what all of this means is, in response to Santa Clara's concern, is if for some reason the trend towards smaller contours were to somehow reverse and things were starting to get worse again, if that were ever to happen, there's regular updates to the contour, and we would automatically offer treatment to any resident that's not currently in the 65 that might be within the future 65. So that worry or concern on the part of Santa Clara is automatically addressed with the absolute threshold. So, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public that wish to comment on this agenda item? Seeing no comment cards or hands, are there any members of the commission? I see Commissioner Yesny.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The EIR identifies the impacts to various biological elements, including significant impacts to burrowing owls. It identifies a degradation of habitat, a loss of habitat, and actually death of more owls. The mitigation, there are several elements of the mitigation program, but the one I'm wondering about is the reliance on the habitat conservation plan. We're talking about spending money, as I understand, to try to protect the population of burrowing owls in the South Bay, which is a lovely thing if that actually happens. So I asked staff to request someone who could respond to my question as to what is happening with regard to the burrowing owl conservation program, not just on the airport, where apparently there has been some sloppiness about maintaining the habitat over time, but what's happening in the South Bay. Because at one time, at least, it was nothing good. So can you tell me if this mitigation program is working?
Good evening, Commissioner Yesny. So just before this hearing, I spoke with Edmund Sullivan, who is the lead of the Santa Clara Valley Habitat Agency, and he was addressing this concern about what our burrowing owl mitigation fees are being used for. So currently, no land has been purchased yet. However, the Habitat Agency is working on placing a conservation easement over the regional wastewater facility buffer lands, and are also in agreement with the United States Fish and Wildlife Service at Don Edwards Refuge to manage over 700 acres for owls in Fremont. One thing that has been happening is there has been a decrease in the burrowing owl population across the South Bay and the developed areas. So the Habitat Agency has been using a lot of these money to do on captive rearing program, and this includes at the Warm Springs unit of the Don Edwards Wildlife Refuge. In addition, there is programs for supplemental feeding of hatchlings, and they're currently proposing to buy lands potentially in the southern part of the county, such as near Pacheco Pass, and reintroducing birds to these areas in order that are less susceptible to development. So currently the burrowing owl fees that are paid as part of the habitat plan are being used to fund these programs to help raise the burrowing owl population and bring it up, because as Ed Sullivan said, there is definitely concern because across the northern part of Santa Clara County there's been a precipitous drop, and so their program is to raise and help the burrowing owls and put them in other locations they may be better to survive. I also have Stephen Rottenborn, a biologist for the project, who is also can answer more specific questions about what the airport is doing. So.
And just for the record, I'm going to also close the public comment.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Steve Rottenborn. I'm a wildlife ecologist and vice president with H.T. Harvey & Associates Ecological Consultants. We prepared the biological resources report on which the biological resources section of the EIR was prepared. Commissioner Yesny, thank you for your question about that. It's a good question. What will the money be used for, and what has the Santa Clara Valley Habitat Agency done for the burrowing owl to date? And I actually spoke with someone, a burrowing owl expert in the South Bay, about this earlier today, and his response was, without what the Habitat Agency has been doing, we would have no burrowing owls left in the South Bay. And so he was able to, he has been involved in a lot of the activities that Edmund Sullivan, the director of the Habitat Agency, spoke to. So I'll speak to some of those a little more specifically. And one of the issues that has come up is, what habitat has been acquired for the burrowing owl or set aside. And the problem with burrowing owl populations in the South Bay now is that they've declined disproportionate to habitat loss. So while habitat loss has affected them, they've disappeared from some areas that look perfect for them, but the populations have just gotten so low that it's not just a matter of acquiring more habitat. More needs to be done to maintain, enhance that habitat, and to protect burrowing owls. So some of the things that have been done, the Santa Clara Valley Habitat Agency has had 5-year management plans, and there are 5-year management plans that will be updated after 5 years, and they'll learn from what they've found during the 5-year management plans for the San Jose Santa Clara Water Pollution Control Plant bufferlands and the Warm Springs unit of the refuge, 2 areas that historically have supported large numbers of burrowing owls. And those management plans include some habitat enhancement efforts, such as providing new soil mounds that have loose soil that not only burrowing owls can use, but that ground squirrels can better dig burrows in so that burrowing owls can use those, installing artificial burrows in those mounds, weeding the mounds, because a big problem in the South Bay with regard to burrowing owl habitat management is that the vegetation around their burrows grows up way too high, and so the owls can't see predators coming, and they usually abandon those burrows. So a lot better habitat maintenance in those areas. They've been banding the owls so that they can see where they move around. They monitor the number from year to year, and they have cameras on a number of the burrows so that they can see what predators visit those sites. And in terms of the efficacy of those efforts, in 2012, there were 2 pairs of burrowing owls at the San Jose Water Pollution Control Plant bufferlands. It increased from 2 pairs in 2012 to 17 pairs in 2017 as a result, direct result of those habitat enhancements and the management that's been going on. And so that'll happen at Warm Springs also. We also heard about the captive rearing program. Too many of these owls are dying between breeding seasons. So one thing they did last year, they took 16 owls into captivity. They kept them over the winter. In captivity, they fed them. None of them died. So those owls, those are young juvenile owls, most of which would have died during the winter. They survived the winter, and now they're going to release them. They're going to release 5 pairs this Saturday at Shoreline Park. And when they release them, they do what we used to do back in the late 90s. We would actively relocate these owls. We'd move them to areas that were good for them and keep them inside enclosures and feed the owls until they lay eggs. Once they lay eggs, they're imprinted on that area. They're not going to leave that area. So it's helping the owls to settle in areas that we know are being managed well for them, where predators are being managed well for them. And they even looked at those owls because there are so few owls left in the South Bay, they don't want closely related owls breeding with each other, so they did genetic studies and they pair up owls that are not closely related. So they're really, this is cutting edge in terms of burrowing owl conservation, what the Habitat Agency is doing with these owls. And then the supplemental feeding study, they actually just putting mice, thawed out frozen mice in the mouths of some of the nest burrows. They've been doing it for the past 3 years, and it has increased productivity, increased the number of young that survive to fledging age. So the Habitat Agency has been drawing on the best resources in terms of burrowing owl experts in the South Bay, and are trying to address the issue of the owl population, not just the available habitat.
In your opinion, what are the long-term prognosis for these areas if they're having to feed the birds and nurture the young over winter? Has this area become so unproductive that birds can't survive here?
I don't think the area itself has become so unproductive. I think that the burrowing owl population kind of reached a demographic threshold where there are so few owls that when owls die in one area, that there aren't enough owls that are immigrating into that area from other South Bay locations. So what they're trying to do is to increase the population. And this hands-on approach that you've pointed out, it is more hands-on than we want to do with populations of any species. But in the long term, the idea is to do this to increase the survivorship and the productivity over the natural levels to try to get the population up to the point where the natural survivorship and the natural productivity can still maintain a population. So I agree with you that these aren't the kinds of hands-on management that we want to be doing in the long term, but they are necessary because there are so few owls now.
And it sounds like the population on the airport is probably going to fall below those levels at some point in the near future.
It probably has, but one of the things that the mitigation could do, so the mitigation would provide funding to the Habitat Agency to decide what is the best use of this funding for the burrowing owl population. And it's possible that some of that money may come back to the airport if the Habitat Agency decides that there are lands at the airport that are worth managing for burrowing owls. It may go elsewhere, but the idea is to maintain and recover the population in the South Bay rather than just in any one area like at the airport.
Okay. Thank you. I think that answers my questions.
All right, thank you.
Are there any other commissioners who, I see one, Commissioner Bonilla.
Question to staff. I'm reading page 25 of your report. Very detailed. Great job, by the way. And this is more for Mr. and Mrs. Smith watching on television tonight, since we're all home. What would be the negative economic impact to the city of San Jose if, looking at your hypotheticals, San Jose didn't have an airport anymore? Besides bad, I guess, but.
Your question is,
If
what would be the implications on the regional economy if the airport didn't exist?
correct.
Boy, that's quite a question. I mean, I really don't know how to answer that. I mean, the fact is, the airport's here, and it's been an asset to San Jose and Silicon Valley for a number of decades. And the scenario of what if the airport wasn't here, I don't know. Certainly, Silicon Valley wouldn't be what it is today.
Well, and that's really where I'm headed. I mean, fundamentally, what makes this city world class is this airport. In many ways, it is a gateway that brings folks from throughout the world to our city. So I think, looking at your report, analyzing your report, I thought it was interesting that you did talk about that. Obviously, not in that type of detail, but that you did talk about the economic and land use implications if the San Jose airport was abandoned and moved elsewhere. So that's really where I'm headed. So thank you for indulging me in a very wide question with more of a statement than a question.
Yes, Mr. Commissioner, this is Judy Ross, the Assistant
Mr.
Director.
Works.
We do have an economic benefit study on our website. I'm trying to pull it up.
Sure.
And that gives some of those numbers in employment base, direct and indirect employment that the airport creates, and also the dollars recirculating in the community. I just can't bring it up enough to tell you, but it is a significant impact, and we do have a significant number of businesses on the airport, and we do have a significant number of businesses that use our airport in a regional area. So it's not just San Jose, it's a regional area.
Exactly. Thank you for that. And I'll actually be utilizing your airport tomorrow. So
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, any other commissioner comments or questions? Commissioner Allen.
Thank you, Chair. Quick question on the hotel, or the proposed hotel. Who would be managing that? Well, who would be paying for construction? Who would be managing it? Is FJC paying for it and managing it, or is this, you're going to bring in an operator? Can you give a little bit more on that?
Again, Mr. Commissioner, Judy Ross, Assistant Director. I'm sorry, I can't see you very well. The hotel would be more like a private-public partnership. it will do a competitive process to bring in a developer, and that developer would bring in hotelier. So basically, we would lease the land, and whoever's successful in that solicitation process, and then it would be like a land lease and a concession agreement, but it would be operated by whoever was successful in a competitive process.
Thank you very much. And then another quick question about, there were comments from the public about around public transportation options as far as getting to the airport. I know that's always been a concern. I imagine there's a coordination that has to happen with those, with other agencies, so it can't be included in the master plan. Is that the case? And if so, or if not, could you speak to where any potential upgrades in that regard could be headed, beyond BART and the shuttles and everything we've already heard about?
Yes, thank you for that question. It's actually part of the existing master plan to accommodate some sort of transit system, which is still yet to be defined. There was a project that was in the County Measure A in the year 2000 that called for an automated people mover that would connect the airport terminals to the North First Street Light Rail Line and the Santa Clara Caltrain and future BART station. The latest VTA cost estimates for that is like $800 million. And you compare that to the free shuttle bus that's been operating for years to those locations that costs $1 million a year in operating costs. So there's yet to be a good business case to bring in some sort of transit system. We have designed the garages and terminals, particularly the rental car garage and Terminal B. It was actually designed to allow for some sort of transit system to come in underneath those buildings and have a station. And certainly the roadway can have an elevated transit structure on top of it. And so what's going on right now, as the Commission may know, the City of San Jose, mainly through the Transportation Department, is working with VTA and a couple other public agencies on looking at how to potentially connect the airport to Diridon Station, and as well as the San Carlos Stevens Creek corridor. And so that study is underway. And so whatever comes of that, if there's a project that comes out of that, certainly the airport is prepared to accommodate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And one final quick plug, as someone with not the best knees in the world and always seem to get the flight at the far end of the terminal, I know that the people movers or the moving walkways have been in conversation for a while. Just another plug. You don't have to answer a question. Just making sure that that's something that you're aware would be really nice in these really long terminals that we have. But thank you very much for the presentation tonight. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there any other comments or questions? Any motions? All right, I think we had a couple seconds. First one I heard was from Commissioner Yesny. So let's take a vote. Or does the maker of the motion want to speak to the motion? No? And no. The motion passes 5-0. Right. Turning to the next item on our agenda, which is referrals from City Council, boards, commissions, or other agencies. I'm seeing no items. We're going to move to good and welfare. Can we have a report from City Council?
Yes, Madam Chair. There were 5 items that were recommended from this commission to City Council. All of them were approved. The first 3 had to do with a conforming rezoning of specific properties. The 4th had to do with the mobile home land use designation. And then the 5th had to do with the Hakka Middle School. All were approved. Specifically, the Haka Middle School, the appeal was denied. The project was approved with conditions.
And on the mobile home issue, how did City Council decide on that?
Council members Jimenez, Perales, Esparza, and Foley wrote memos in support of that. And so their recommendations were accepted, and staff was directed to begin necessary environmental reviews for that.
And did the City Council accept any of the Planning Commission recommendations, or was it just the staff recommendations?
They accepted all.
The Planning Commission
That
recommendations?
was my understanding.
Oh,
If I may, my understanding was that the city council did approve the mobile home redesignation for the 2 parks that were the subject of the matter.
That's right.
They directed staff to begin the process for the other mobile home parks in San Jose. However, the mayor also and some of the council members recognized that those amendments are unnecessary to serve the purposes because they all would require a general plan amendment, which could be denied by the council at any time. So unlike these 2 parks, they could not, the 2 parks at issue, they could not easily convert or, attempt to convert. It would take a lot more process that was completely discretionary. However, they also did not, at the time, planning department advise the council of how much money it will take to accomplish all of those general plan amendments and rezonings. They have to be done concurrently under state law now. And the city council has not budgeted that amount. So the work will probably not start until there is a budget for staff to do that work.
Thank you, Mayor.
thank you. Any other questions from commissioners? All right. Turning to the action minutes from February 26, 2020. Move to approve the action minutes.
So moved.
All right. Let's do a vote. And in the theme of the night, we have a 5-0 vote in favor. I see nothing under subcommittee formation reports or outstanding business. And then the last item on our calendar, other than the public record, which I also see nothing, is the commissioner calendar and study sessions. Looks like we have one scheduled for March 25th, 2020.
That's correct. And that will be the citywide design guidelines.
All right, so I think our meeting is adjourned.